Was it always cracked up to be? Like becoming famous, becoming well known?
I don't think that I ever thought that I was going to be famous. I quit IBM in 84. My mother's first question was, "Are you on the dope?" Whatever the dope was. My goal was to be good enough to be on Johnny Carson. And everybody in the business said it took you 10 years to be that good. And it took me 5 years and 2 months. Every full life needs to have a few hold your nose and jump moments where you don't know what's going to happen, but you hold your nose and you jump. You're never going to be 100% prepared. And even if you were, it doesn't unfold the way you've envisioned it anyway. Don't wait for it to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect.
That's such great advice.
I was like the only kid of divorced parents that I knew, and I really wanted a dad. It was the story of the prodigal son. If that's what kind of father God is, I'm going to just let God be my dad, because that's what I needed. They just love me with all that they are. I think the secret to life, it's letting go. Oh my word, is it freeing to go, hey, I don't know what's going to happen here, but you do. You're in control of all of us, and you say for those that love you that what you've got for us is good, so I'm just going to trust you on that.
Hey guys, it's Ed. I rarely do this. As you know, 99.9% of my content is free. But once a year, I do something where I gather a very small group of people in my house. I've done it for 2 years in a row now, and I'm going to do it again this year. If you go to maxout2026.com, I'm going to do an experience in my home where I'm going to take you through how to make 2026 the best year of your life, all of the tactics and strategies that I use to plan and organize my own life in detail. Same time, all of the mental rehearsal and visualization techniques that people pay me hundreds of millions of dollars a year to teach them, I will be teaching that day as well. And the other years I've done it, I've had groups of about 25 or 30. I've decided this year I want to shrink the size of the group so that I can get more one-on-one time with each of you. So I'm going to keep the groups to 12 or 15. It's a chance to spend a day with me in my home, lunch, one-on-one time, and group time. And it's not cheap, so if it's something you can't afford, please don't get yourself in any financial trouble or debt doing so. But if it's something you can afford to do, go to maxout2026.com, and I'm looking forward to having you in my home with me very soon for an amazing day, a life-changing day. God bless you. All right, welcome back to the show, everybody. So I got to tell you, I get asked often, you've done 800 some odd shows, are there some that stand out that are special? And you would know if that's true because someone will come on the show. Only about maybe 1% of the guests we have back on, not because everybody's not incredible, but just because a few affect me personally. Like I can't stop thinking about the episode when it's done. And my guest today is one of those episodes. And so I'm so honored that he's back. The show that we did together, I really haven't stopped thinking about on and off for a couple years now. And he moved me in a way that I didn't think. He's obviously one of the funniest people of all time, one of the most successful comedians in the history of that industry. But I'm more interested in who this man is behind the scenes than just a bunch of redneck jokes, even though they're great jokes. So he's a man of deep faith. I really believe he's a good man, very successful man. You know who he is. He's got a special on Netflix that I've watched probably 3 times called The Good Old Days. But I think you're going to be moved by him today and very interested throughout the entire interview. So really grateful you're back, brother. Jeff Foxworthy, welcome back to the show.
Hey, I'm honored to be one of the 1%. And I know what you mean because I do a podcast on Sirius, and every once in a while somebody just, like you said, you finish it and you're like, whoa, that was different. That was cool.
It was different for me. There's so many things I want to ask you about, and actually what we're going to do is we have re-released the first one and maybe a week or two before this, so people who have been familiar with it. But I want to just randomly ask you something. You had all this success, and I get asked this sometimes. I'm not as successful, anywhere near as successful as you are, but I do get asked this, and I'm curious with you. Was it always cracked up to be? I mean, like the financial piece of it, like becoming famous, becoming well known, going from obscurity to fame, wealth, all that kind of stuff that comes with so many people listening to my show are interested in achieving themselves. I'm curious if it's what you thought it was and whether it was worth it or not, truly.
I don't think that I ever thought that I was going to be famous.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing prepares you to be famous. No, I grew up in a little blue collar town where it never crossed my mind I could do something creative and make a living. I knew I was creative. I knew at a young age I was funny. I could draw really well. Two times in high school, I got nominated for the Governor's Honors Program in art, actually. And it was like a 6 week thing during the summer, but I think you had to pay like $200 to go. And my dad thought art was sissy and he wouldn't shell out the money.
Mm.
I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe I ended up being an artist instead of comedian, but that wasn't an option. You went to work. So I don't know that I ever, even when I found it, I remember the first night that I did stand up, and like a minute and a half in, I thought, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. And I met my wife that night, which was so bizarre. So I met my wife and I met my career on the same night, same place. And she was really the only person when we started dating. She just kept saying to me, you have all this creative stuff inside of you. If you don't do something creative, you're going to explode. You're not made to sit in a cubicle.
Mm.
And she was the only person saying that. So I quit my job at IBM. My mother's first question was, are you on the dope? Whatever the dope, whatever the dope was. And but Ed, because I was thinking, could I do this? Could I do this? And it was almost divine. So one day I'm sitting in the break room at work, sitting by myself, and there was a table in there with like three guys in their 60s. And one guy was talking about, he goes, I always wanted to own a hardware store. I wish I'd owned a hardware store. I would have loved having a hardware store. And one of the other guys was like, yeah, I wish I had done. And I thought, and of course, I'm early 20s, but I thought, oh my word, I don't want to be sitting in this break room when I'm 60 going, I wish I'd tried to be a comedian. So I don't know that I thought it would work, but I thought, hey, worst case, I could come back with my hat in my hands and say, it didn't work.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't want to be sitting here when I'm 60 going, I wish I had tried it. And actually the day I went in to tell them I was quitting, they were telling me that they were sending me to management school. And I'm like, you may want to hold those plans because I'm quitting. I'm gonna go try this.
How long between that? By the way, everybody listening to this, those words should ring in your ears because I feel kind of similarly. Like I'm so blessed that certain things worked out, but what I didn't want to have happen was be an old man, laying in my rocking chair wondering.
Yes.
I didn't
And
want
that's
to
the
ever.
way I figured I'd get away with it for a couple of years,
Mhm.
but I'd have a cool story to tell my grandkids. Hey, I was a comic for a few years. Uh, and 2 years has turned into 42,
My
so
God is so good, and you're so good. How long did it take? Like that's the stories are always pretty after the fact. Yeah, I made this decision. My wife encouraged me, and then pap, it's Jeff Foxworthy. But I imagine there's all these nights where you're riddled with self doubt. You're broke. How long was it between that first time on stage and you're like, oh, I'm on the other side of this now? And what was that time like for you? Were you navigating doubt in your mind? What was it? What was it all like?
I quit IBM in 84. At the time, I think I was making 32,000 a year,
Hmm.
uh, which was good money. Wore suit and tie to work. My first full year of comedy, and I know this because I found, remember the little weekly pocket calendars,
Yeah.
and I would write in every date and every show. My first full year of comedy, I did 406 shows. I made $8,300 for the year.
My gosh.
So I was making a quarter of what I made. And never remember thinking, I can't do this. I need to go back
Hmm.
because I was loving it. I was writing like a banshee. I was on the road, but we didn't have kids, so she would go with me. She'd go with me. She'd look at my calendar. She'd go, you go to Toledo by yourself. I'll go with you to Honolulu and San Francisco. You know, I'm like, no, I need you in Toledo, you know. Uh, and I mean, it was a slow climb, but my goal was to be good enough to be on Johnny Carson. And everybody in the business said it took you 10 years to be that good. And I'm like, I don't think Johnny's going to stay 10 more years. So I'm going to do it in half that. And I remember a Malcolm Gladwell thing where he said, you do something for 10,000 hours, you become an expert at it. After that first year, I had 8 years in a row, I did 500 shows a year. And I said, if it takes you 10 years to be good enough to be on Carson, I'm going to do it in five. And it took me 5 years and 2 months. I've got a picture over there. So that night, you know, when you did Carson, and it wasn't like now, you didn't have 8,000 channels on TV.
Yeah.
But if Carson liked you,
The
he
cow.
was like a kingmaker for a comic.
Mhm.
And they said before you go out, at the end of your 6 minutes, if he claps, he didn't really care for you. If he gives you the big okay sign, he liked you. And if he loved you, he'll call you to the couch. Well, you get to the end of your 6 minutes, you're scared to look because it's like Caesar, you know, do I
Yeah.
live or do I die? And he was calling me to the couch. And I mean, instantly, like the next week, Vegas is like, do you want a headline in Vegas?
Wow.
Because Johnny called you to the couch. He was a career maker. And
Wow.
I remember going home that night and lying in bed staring at the ceiling thinking, I don't have a plan now. That was it. That was all I ever wanted to do was make Johnny laugh. And I got a picture sitting in the chair talking to Johnny and he's got his mouth wide open laughing. And I'm like, that was it. That's all I wanted to do.
Was it I didn't think I'd go there with you, but I'm curious about it because I think people would love to know what's it feel like to be actually in the moment walking in your dream. Were you terrified that night walking out, or was there a piece about you like I've been preparing for this all my life and I'm ready? I'm like right before you walked out. I'm curious if you can remember what was that like.
Terrified,
Mm.
terrified to the point that they took you out during the commercial break. And the guy said, when the curtain opens about 5 feet out in front of you, it's going to be a gold star. Just stand on that star. Well, one of the hardest things to do in stand up is to create a 6 minute TV set because, and they told me, they said not 5:55 and not 6:05, 6 minutes. So I'd written the 6 minute set. I say written, I'd pieced together the 6 minute set. And I'd gone around, we were living in that, we had just moved to LA because my wife said, you're never going to know if you could do the Tonight Show unless you moved to LA. And we had been there for a month and I was doing a set at the Improv and the talent coordinator followed me out into the lobby and said, how come you haven't done the Tonight Show? And I said, because you won't open my tapes. You keep mailing them back to me. But I had this 6 minute thing down and had done it 25 times around town. I knew it was 6 minutes. But when they placed me behind the curtain, I think I can't do this. I'm going to pass out. I'm just going to walk off and they'll have to figure out how to fill time on their show. I can't do this. And something kept me in that spot and the band stopped and come behind the curtain open and I find the star and I go out there and I do the first three or four jokes. And then like the fourth joke not only gets a big laugh, it gets an applause break, which never happened in the clubs when I'm working on that 6 minutes.
Now the
So
time's
I'm smiling on the outside, but on the inside, I'm going, oh no, oh no. Okay. In 2 minutes, I've got four jokes about my mother. The third one is the weakest. I'm going to cut that joke out. So the set I've been rehearsing for 2 weeks nonstop. I'm editing in my mind. Three jokes later, another applause break. I mean, I can hear Johnny laughing. It's going well, but it ain't helping me. And I'm like, okay, I can't eliminate another mom joke, but a minute after that, I do a joke about my dad that has a tag to it. I'm cutting the tag to that. So I'm editing ahead of myself as I'm going through this. And I knew my last joke was 30 seconds. So I told the camera guy, the guy behind the camera, I said, when I get to 5 minutes, hold up five fingers. And when I get to 5.5, hold up a fist. And if I'm not on at 5, I got 30 seconds to correct that. And at 5, he gave me that. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to cut one other little thing. I cut something else. And when he hit the fist, I was going into my last joke, and it just worked out. But I was mentally exhausted. But just that editing process, and I look over and Johnny's waving me over to the couch, and I'm like, what in the world are we going to talk about? We haven't rehearsed this, we haven't done anything. And he was so good at what he did. He just kind of lobbed them up for you. And he's like, well, this accent, how does that go over in the business? Because he knew I had jokes about that. And
So good.
um,
Yeah, it's fascinating because I think anyone listening to this, like, there's really some validity to it. Like, you can prepare and prepare, but at some point, you just got to get in the room. There's some things in life I'm just convinced you just don't prepare for. You just need to be in that moment, and you've got to rely on your resiliency, your ability to pivot, innovate. And in that moment, your preparation does help you because you've done it. But nothing's ever. I think so many people don't go for their dream because their threshold of how prepared they think they need to be is so high they never really pursue anything because they're waiting for 100% preparedness, which is impossible.
Well, and to your point, you're never going to be, whether it's to be a parent, whether it's, I told my kids growing up, I said, every full life needs to have a few hold your nose and jump moments where you don't know what's going to happen, but you hold your nose and you jump. And thank God I held my nose and jumped and went in there and quit IBM. Thank God I didn't walk off from behind that curtain,
Mm.
yeah, you're never going to be 100% prepared. And even if you were, it doesn't unfold the way you've envisioned it anyway. So I think you have to be flexible. But yeah, don't wait for it to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect.
It's such great advice. I was this time around, I'm like, because you did affect me when we talked the first time. I want to know more about him. I learned a lot about it when we talked, but so I'm like, what goes into making of somebody? Obviously, you and I are both believers, so much of in our life is we just give glory to God and we're blessed. But there are seeds that are planted in our life. He provides the harvest, but there's seeds that must be planted if certain things are going to happen in life, or some things that are going to happen. And so I went like, what's this guy's background a little bit? And so this blew my mind. And if I'm wrong, it'll be a bizarre question, but I don't think I am. Is it true that you knew Truett Cathy as a young boy? And if y'all don't know who I'm talking about, this is the founder of Chick-fil-A. Did you know him actually? Was there like kind of a mentoring relationship? Imagine this. This man becomes Jeff's very wealthy guy, unbelievably successful. You're like, is there anything in his background? Did he have a mentor? Did he have something? Maybe comes from good parents, but is that accurate? Did I hear that correctly in my research that the founder of Chick-fil-A was sort of a friend or mentor to
So,
you, or
so
what?
my dad left early in life. My dad ended up being married 6 times and had 1,000 affairs in between. My mom went to church 5 times a week, and so I don't care what a parent says. When a parent leaves, especially in a situation like that, you feel like you weren't sticking around for. That's what I felt as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess, and to make it worse, Ed, I was away at church camp. I came home from church camp and half the furniture was gone. My dad had left and moved in with his girlfriend, and nobody had prepped me for it or anything. So in my mind, I thought, okay, guess I wasn't worth sticking around for. And I went to live with my grandparents for while my mom kind of sold the house and did. So I lived with my grandparents in a little town called Hapeville, Hape, right by the airport in Atlanta. And until I was in high school, Hapeville, that was the only Chick-fil-A on the planet Earth was in Hapeville, Georgia. And Truett was a good guy because Hapeville was kind of the wrong side of the tracks. You either worked at for Delta or the Ford plant, which was there. But Truett always had a free Chick-fil-A thing in his pocket. And when he'd see you as a little kid, he'd hand you one, which was like a Willy Wonka golden ticket, you know.
Mm,
But he would talk to you and he would tell you things. And I remember one time he said to me, he said, Jeff, he said, do you know who how to tell when somebody needs encouragement? And I was like, no, sir, Mr. Cathy. He said, if they're breathing, he
mm,
said, everybody needs encouragement and it doesn't cost you anything to give it to them.
mm,
I was a little kid. That stuck. It's to this day. I walk into a place and I think, who needs encouragement in here? Is it the bus boy? Is it the girl working behind the counter? Is it the
mm.
cook? You know, and he was right. It doesn't cost you anything to give it to them. And but what it made me do was seek out those, I call them kind of shadow people. Who's the person that everybody's looking through or past?
Mm,
And Truett was just a wise guy. And coming from that, nothing prepared Truett Cathy to be a billionaire, you know?
mm.
Nothing prepared Jeff Foxworthy to be a millionaire. And so I
Wow.
just never took
Wow.
the money was never the goal.
Mm,
I wanted to be good at what I did. And I kind of viewed it, even on my podcast, which is called A Comic Mind. I start every comedian with the same question. I said, are you born funny? And is it a gift or is it a skill set you can acquire? And I 100% believe that it was a gift I was given
mm,
by God. You could call me and say, hey, Jeff, I need 30 jokes tonight about home security. And I don't know why I'd pull out a notepad and I would start writing you jokes. I don't know why I can do that. So
mm,
it's a gift. I can't even be cocky about it because I
mm,
don't know why I can do it. Just like some people are great taking care of old people, and some people are great with kids, and some people are musicians. But I think we're all given gifts,
mm.
and you need to honor the gift.
Wow. Wow.
Use it use it wisely, use it for good. And if you get successful at it and you get a platform, you need to leverage that for the person that gave you the gift, right? And so it was that combo of things. My dad leaving, man, I wanted a dad. I was like the only kid of divorced parents that I knew, and I really wanted a dad. And I remember being young and I decided, hey, I want, and it was the story of the prodigal son. The dad in that story, it's called The Prodigal Son, but it's really about the dad. That dad, you couldn't do anything bad enough to make that dad love you any less, and you couldn't perform good enough to make that dad love you anymore. He just loved you with all he had, and he was available. And even when the son wasn't there, I love the part where it said, when the prodigal son decides to come home, it said, and when he was still a long way away, the father saw him. Well, you don't see somebody a long way away unless you're actively looking for them. And Jesus told that parable because he was describing the father. And I just kind of decided, okay, so if that's what kind of father God is, I'm going to let God be my dad. I'm going to just let God be my dad because that's what I need. I need somebody that's here every day. I need somebody that's going to love me when I screw up. And I can, even if I do well, they're not going to love me anymore. They just love me with all that they are.
Mm,
And when I go speak in a spiritual setting, that's what usually I talk about is the prodigal son.
yeah. You're doing it to me again. Here we go. Part of your faith, the work that you do, the seeds that you plant is you do minister. You know, we talked a little bit this last time, but I want to unpack this a little bit. You play a father role to some extent, and you do minister to people, particularly in the homeless community, or at least specifically in the homeless community. And I want to talk about that a little bit. We're right before we talked, our mutual friend Tim Tebow, we talked for a few minutes, the three of us, before we went live, and Tim always talks about the fact that he was an MVP in football, and he said, now I'm an MVP in a much more important way. And to your point of what you just said, seeking out the vulnerable person, Tim says, I want to help our most vulnerable people.
Yeah.
And I'm serious when I say this. When Tim says this, just a few people that have been on the show flash in my mind, and you're one of them. about
Mm.
when he talks like that. And so I'm wondering if you just share with us like the genesis of that whole thing of you, you know, most people just wouldn't picture. I don't think the funny guy on stage has the depth. And I don't mean that as a backhanded compliment. There's a depth to you because of the depth of your faith that it's attractive and intriguing to me. So could you just unpack that a little bit? Why you do that work and what the work is specifically?
I had a heart for the underdog. My oldest daughter has it, and she certainly didn't grow up an underdog. Hateville was kind of, like I said, the wrong side of the tracks. Like the things you remember as a kid. We were good at baseball. We went to play one of the rich schools on the north side of town. And I remember when we got off the bus, they were making fun of us because our uniforms were really pretty old and crappy. They were like the old wool, but they were making fun of us. And I remember stepping off that bus thinking, you don't know anything about me other than what kind of shirt I got on. And you've already judged me. And we went up there and beat the snot out of them and then got back on the bus. Well, then you become rich and famous and people judge you again because now you got a nicer shirt on. And I'm like, no, it's the same little boy inside the shirt. I root for the underdog. I used to joke I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I had a KFC spork, one of those plastic sporks.
Spork.
Uh,
Oh
but
boy.
my aunt was an oncology nursing professor at Emory. My brother played football at Duke on a scholarship. And
Wow.
so
Okay.
my wife and I were like the head of fundraising for the Duke Children's Hospital for 18 years. And they're kind of like St. Jude. They don't turn a kid away based on ability to pay.
Hmm.
So they have to, man, they have to raise so much money. But when we would go up there, like the first time we went up there, they had their little promo staff and they said, okay, we're going to go see this kid and this kid and this kid. And I said, no, no, we're not. We're not walking. If I walk past somebody's room, that's going to make them think they weren't worth stopping for. So we'll go visit them, but we're going to visit every kid. And it ended up, I mean, it took forever. It took 5 or 6 hours to go say hi to every kid. And my wife was so good with the parents. And it was just an unspoken thing. I would go to the child, she would go to the parents. And I would tell my kids, I used to take them up there when they were little. And I said, they're in here because one morning they woke up with a sore throat. They didn't do anything better or worse than you. It's by the grace of God you're not in here, or I'm not in here. So I don't know. I've just always rooted for the because maybe I felt like a little bit of an underdog growing up. I don't know. But it was kind of the same thing with the homeless thing. And I don't recall if we went into that whole discussion, but once you know somebody's name and once you know somebody's story, and everybody's got a name and everybody's got a story, you can't, it's hard to look past them. And what I found from my homeless guys was I think a lot of people just tend to think either they're lazy or they're in addiction.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what I used to think. I mean, the way I dealt with homeless people was if I'm at a red light and I see one, I'd reach in my pocket and pull out $10 and give it to them and like go away. But did I tell you, and stop me if I did, about the first guy I ever met at the shelter?
Yeah, but I want to talk about it. That's Jason, isn't it?
Jason, yeah.
Yeah,
So
go ahead. I want them to hear this.
So, so the first kid I meet at the shelter, he's like 21 years old, healthy. And I sit down and have lunch with him, and I ask everybody their story. I said, "What's your story, Jason?" And he said, "Well, it was me, my brother, my mom, and my dad. And when I was 11, my mom killed herself. And a couple of years after that, my brother killed himself. And it was me and my dad. In my second year of college, my dad killed himself." And he said, I got where I could not hurt anymore and I started smoking crack. And I'm sitting across the table thinking, hell, dude, I would have started smoking crack too.
Mm-hmm.
Who can lose everybody in their immediate family to suicide and all the thoughts that go with that? And so Jason wasn't a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
Jason had a hurt that he couldn't deal with. And when I started doing small group Bible studies with these guys, you start realizing almost every one of them, something bad had happened to them
Mm,
as a kid.
mm,
And they couldn't deal with the hurt, so they started drinking or they started doing drugs. And when you do that, you're not employable. And, then you take from your family and to the point they can't deal with it anymore. And that's how you end up on the street.
mm.
And so I learned through that thing, it's like, okay, if we can ever identify the hurt, then maybe you got a shot. And
Mm.
I mean, I don't know how many times I'd have a prepared lesson and we'd be doing it, and some guy would just start crying, and I'd like, Pete, what's wrong? And Pete would then tell a story about how his uncle would abuse him in the garage or something.
Mm.
And I said, okay, that's Pete, this is so great because you've had this locked in the basement. And now you've finally gone down, opened that door, drug it up the stairs, pulled it out in the front yard, and let it sit in the sunlight and call it what it is.
Mm.
It's not a secret anymore. And we love you just the same. And God loves you just the same. And so if you could ever put salve on that hurt and
Yeah.
just say, this is not your fault. This your love, man. And part of my image, because there's something I don't know if other people think like I'm such a picture guy, but man, there's so many times I would do it as a kid and I still do it as a 67-year-old, is I'll say to God, Dad, can I crawl up in your lap and you just rub my head for a minute, please? Because I'm having a bad day today.
Mm.
And that's the way I view it, man. It's that loving father, just like, yeah, buddy, crawl
Mm.
up in my lap.
This is
Just,
this is such a good conversation. I told you guys it's going to be a normal one. It's interesting. You help people heal through the Bible study stuff you do, the ministry stuff you do. You heal them when they laugh. And as I've been a speaker my dad was an alcoholic and a drug addict.
hmm,
My dad got sober though. So I had two dads. I had the dad before that, and then had this amazing father for many years after that. I was
that's
blessed to
cool. Yeah,
be
you got to
both.
see him that way. Yeah.
And I think one lesson I would share with everybody today, just because it just occurred to me saying it, so I just need to make sure I say it, is, my dad then helped thousands of other people get sober over his lifetime. And the reason that is you're most qualified in your life to help those that you used to be. And so a lot of times the adversary will try to get you to believe your sin, your mistake, your setback, your divorce, your bankruptcy, your sin, your averageness, the fact that you've always been average is disqualifying to do anything great in your life. And the fact is, I think God's going, no, 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 no. We're going to use that. And that's my dad's alcoholism and drug addiction was really the catalyst of the great works that my dad did in his life. And so you're
Yeah,
most
it's
qualified to help
it's
you to be.
it's what made people listen to him is he knew what he was talking about, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Um, I always did that with my comedy. I was lucky. I found a template very early on that worked, and that was that if I thought something, or my wife said something, or my family did something, I'm going to trust other people are thinking and saying and doing the same thing,
Mhm.
no matter where they lived. And even with the redneck jokes, that came from people because I had this thick accent. I remember the first time I was up working in New York, I had a New York comic pull me out in the lobby and he said, Yo, dude, look, I don't want to hurt your feelings or nothing, right? But you got to take some voice lessons and you got to lose that stupid accent you got. And I'm like, well, where I come from, you have the stupid accent. So, but
Right.
so I was adamant about keeping my accent, and I was blue collar. I wore jeans and boots. I drove a pickup truck, and they were always good natured, but they were kidding me about Foxworthy. You're nothing but an old redneck from Georgia. And
Mm.
one night I was playing in a club right outside Detroit, and it was in November, which was deer season. And I said something after the show. We were sitting around. I said, "Man, I wish I was sitting in a tree tomorrow morning. It's the opening weekend of deer season." And they were kidding me. And they're like, "Foxworthy, you're just an old redneck from Georgia." Well, the club we were playing in was attached to a bowling alley that had valet parking. And And I said, if you don't think you have rednecks in Michigan, go look out the window. People are valet parking at the bowling alley. And I went back to the hotel, and I wasn't thinking it was going to be a hook or a book. I was just like, look, I know what I am, but apparently a lot of people don't know if they're in the, and I wrote 10 ways to tell. And so it wasn't laughing at somebody, it was laughing with. I could go through those jokes and I'm like, that's my sister, that's my brother, that's my Uncle Bob, that's my Aunt Judy. I mean,
Mm.
I wasn't doing research. They were popping out pretty quick. Yeah.
I just heard one you did. We won't do the joke here, but I was laughing. It was the wedding reception you went to at Hooters, which is just hilarious, by the way. The reason I want to bring it up was that it's such a good joke, but you're a great storyteller. So I want to do one just kind of tactical thing today. I wonder, a lot of times you have somebody on, I've noticed this with particularly entertainers. I've had a lot of comedians on because I use the show as a weapon to meet people I'm fans of often. And sometimes people that are great at something can't explain how they do it. They're just great at it. So I'm curious which way that goes with you. You are one of the great all-time storytellers, telling a story, writing a story and telling it. I'm wondering tactically, like let's just get granular for a second. What makes a great storyteller? Do you know why you're great at it or why somebody's great at it when you see it as opposed to somebody who's not?
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of people have the thoughts that comedians have, but they go in one ear and they think it and it goes out the other. And there's something about a comic that learns to grab it and go, what is that? And if you look like my background looks pretty cool here, but my desk here in front of you, I write all the time.
Look at that.
Note
Everybody's
cards,
holding up note
typing it
cards and
out,
papers with notes.
paper. And I've always worked at it. I always had a work ethic. And I remember when I started, was the king of the road comics. And he was very generous with his time with young comics. And I remember I was still doing amateur nights and working at IBM. And Leno invited a bunch of people who was working in town to go to the Waffle House. And he was kind of holding court. And he said, your goal should be to write one new minute a week.
Hmm.
Well, and I'm thinking in my mind, I can write 20 or 30 minutes a week. But he was right. And that's being on stage every night to say something that every time you say it, everybody in the room's going to laugh.
Hmm.
And so on those years where I was doing 500 shows a year, I could grind out a new hour every year. Well, then you do an album or you do a special and it's gone and you're right back to the starting block.
Yep.
And no matter how successful you become at it, you don't get to bypass that part. You're right back at the starting block on stage with a note card going, hey, is this funny? Is this funny?
Yep.
And but I worked at it. I always had a work ethic, and I was grinding. I mean, through the years, I think I did 9 albums, which were hours. I did 3 blue-collar movies. I did 2 HBO specials, 2 Showtime specials, 3 for Netflix, 50 Tonight shows. So I'm thinking if you put that into how much material is that?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I think when you say that, I think of you and Seinfeld but the other comedians that I've become friends with, because as a speaker, I'm the same way. I'm always writing. I get stuff next
Yeah.
to me. I mean, I got mine right here as well. Like there's just pages of them of just an idea, a thought. Sometimes it's an entire message. Sometimes it's 2 words. I'm like you as well, but in that sense, in terms of telling stories, but you would, I think, is different about you about and you just tell me I'm wrong. It's okay. Like we're on a, you can tell me I'm wrong, but most of my comedian friends, and by the way, you might say, nah, man, they're just humans. But I would say, I've had Sebastian on, I've had Whitney on, I've had Nikki Glazer on, I've had Dane Cook on. I mean, I've had Christina P. I've had a lot of comedians on. I love them. And not in general, not just, but I would say in general, a lot of comics privately, I think would even say this. That's why I said those names. There's they're moving out of some pain or darkness almost more than the average person I've met. You tell me if I'm wrong about that. And maybe what's different about you is you do have this light in you, which I know what that light is. In general, the comics that you know, would you agree that they've got a little bit more of a pain or trauma or dark view type thing in general, or am I off on
No,
that?
no, I think you're right. Because I've had people say to me, well, I've always heard comedians are laughing on the outside, crying on the inside.
Mhm.
And I go, well, in a lot of cases, that's true. It's not true in my case. But, my wife and I grew up together. She came from kind of a similar background. And I don't know why it worked, but I smoothed down her rough edges and she smoothed down my rough edges. We built each other. And I've learned as grown in this, but I find myself, and I jokingly say I'm two decisions from drywalling. That's how famous I am. If I had to describe myself, I think I'm so thankful. I'm so grateful that I have had a life where I've done something that I really enjoyed. I still enjoy it. I hate the airport and I hate the hotel room. But that moment when the lights go down and people start clapping, I still get excited. I'm like, and I don't know if I shared this with you. I don't want to repeat myself, but doing an interview many years ago, a lady had said, "Okay, you host game shows, you write books, you do stand up, you do sketch. Which one are you?" And I said, "Oh, well, that's an interesting question. Never been asked that." I said, "What you described, those are all things I do, and I love what I do. I wouldn't want to do anything else. But who I am is I'm a husband and a dad and a brother and a son and a person of this community and a child of God. So what I do is probably going to change a lot of times in my life, but that's not my identity." And I think a lot of people in my business, that becomes their identity, because what the world tells you is wealth and fame will make you happy. When I was doing my sitcom in the mid 90s, we filmed between Seinfeld and Roseanne. Um, at the time, Roseanne was number one show on TV, Jerry was number two. But Roseanne had the biggest contract in television. She was making $1 million an episode. So she's super, super famous and making $1 million every 5 days. And she was miserable,
Hmm.
miserable. And everybody that worked on her set was miserable. And I just would kind of take that in and go, okay, the world's lying to you. Because if wealth and fame made you happy, she'd be the happiest person on this lot right here, right? And it's weird. Like if you pull up to a store, like I know when I get out to go into a store that I'm going to get stopped and I'll take pictures with, but people are always nice. I'm nice to them. They're nice to me. Never told anybody no. Um, but I'm not a big deal. I mean, I'm just not. I had a gift that I don't know why I got it. I'm very thankful that I did, but if how can I have an ego about it if I don't know why I can do it, right? I mean, it's like having an ego about the color of your skin. You had no control over that, so why would you have an ego about it? Or having an ego about where you grew up. You didn't have any control over that. Well, we don't have any control over who we were born to either, right? What kind of family we were born into.
It's so important what you just said, brother. Like, and for everyone to make it a personal thing, it's so easy when someone is famous to see their giftedness. You know, Beyonce's ability to sing or dance, or LeBron's 6'8" and 250 and runs a 4.4 and can windmill dunk. Foxworthy's ability to tell a story and make you laugh and connect with you. But what you need to know is you have giftedness as well. And
Everybody does.
everyone. Yeah, and I yours could be your discernment, your humor, your nurturing skills, your intellect, your touch, whatever it might be. And finding that skill, that gift rather, and then finding a way to use it to serve other people. You
Yeah,
you'd be talking just like this guy. I promise you, whatever that is it's teaching, is it ministering, is it making pottery, whatever it is it, it's whatever that thing is. And that's, to me, it's like a great formula for happiness, is exactly what you're saying. It's just easy to see yours because it's probably a little bit unique and more rare than certain other ones, right? Because not everybody can do it on the level that Jeff Foxworthy can, but you all have one. I'm just curious, thinking of it, just made me think of it. I got a couple things I want to ask you before we run out of time. These grandbabies of yours, I'm looking forward to the day that I have mine. I've just got babies, but I want to have grandbabies. And my dad was a way better granddad than he was a dad. Like it was just different. I'm curious. I don't know. It just seemed a little bit different. Most grandparents listen to this, if there are some, would probably say it's just different. If there was like a lesson, I don't mean to be corny, but I'm curious what your answer would be. If there was a lesson from your life you'd want those grandbabies to keep when you're gone, of your life, or what you'd want to impart onto them or into them, what would do you know what it is? What would it be?
It'd probably be, and my daughters would tell you this, but we had a little chalkboard on the door to the garage. And for their entire childhood, the last thing they saw before we got in the car to go to school was, and I had written it in chalk the first day, be kind and try hard. It's like my oldest daughter. She's pretty amazing. This was my oldest daughter was a homebody. Wouldn't go spend the night with her grandmother that lived a mile away. And one time, a guy in my church called and he said, "We got a group of guys taking their oldest kid to go to Kenya to work in AIDS orphanages. Would Jordan like to go?" And I said, "No, Kenya. Jordan won't spend the night with her grandmother across the street." And I said, "Jordan, you want to go to Kenya, work in AIDS orphanage?" Yes, yes, yes. And we get over there and spend a week, and we're in Kibera, the biggest slum in the world. 1 square mile fenced in with 1 million people in it, no electricity, no running water. And Compassion had a thing in there. But we come back from the thing, and Jordan says on the way home, she said, "Dad, there ought to be something kids could do to help people." And I, and she researched, she found out more kids died of malaria than anything in Africa. She found a place where she could buy malaria nets for $10 a piece. And she started doing bake sales and putting change jars at school and partnering with restaurants she ended up forming a little company called Bite Back. And my shy kid would then try in high school, would fly around the country and go speak to youth groups and say, "Here's what's going on, but we can make a difference." And then she'd come home, and then 2 or 3 months later, that group from Colorado would send her a check for 30 grand to buy nets with. And somebody one time said to her, they said, "Well, that's got to be weird. You're in high school and the other girls are talking about what kind of purse they got or what kind of shoes, and you're out here trying to buy malaria nets." And Jordan
Hmm.
said, she said, it's not their fault. She goes, "I've just seen something they haven't seen, but because I've seen it, I have to respond." And
Wow.
to the point
Wow.
that years later, U2 was playing in Atlanta, and I had a lady come get me. Jordan loved U2, and so did I.
Mhm.
And the lady said, tapped me on the shoulder, and she said, "Could y'all come with me?" I said, "What's up?" She said, "Bono wants to meet Jordan." Not Bono wants to meet Jeff. Bono wants to meet Jordan. And he had been following her online. Well,
Come on, that's awesome.
yeah. And so now my daughter with 2 masters works in a homeless mission, you know.
You gotta be so proud, brother. That's
Dude,
that's
yeah.
so awesome. I wish
Yeah.
those of you that are listening on audio, you should just see his face. You should see his face.
He's
That's
my
like,
kid. I'm like, man, how did I end up with a kid like this?
well, I think it's actually pretty obvious how you ended up with a kid like this. I really do. Kids, most things with our children are caught, not taught, and they caught a lot from their daddy for sure. Let me ask you this last, just because what moved me in our last episode is what I consider to be the depth of your faith, and those are the things that I look at in men in my life, that I want in my life, that I admire, men that make me want to walk in my faith better than I do. And just when I left just the conversation with you, and I want to be better. I'd kind of like just leave it open to you for the last question in advance. Thank you for today. I've
Dude,
enjoyed it.
I'm so thankful you would have me, especially to talk about stuff like this. This
Yeah,
is
isn't it
cool.
cool? It's
Yeah,
cool. It's
way
cool.
cool.
Yeah, well, I'm grateful. And so if someone's listening and they're like, been looking for answers in my life too, been, looking, there's this whisper in my heart is what I call it, where I'm just, you know, they're looking at God, they're looking at making a change in their life, and maybe they got a little bit of doubt or some fear or whatever it would be. If someone's considering changing their life in that direction, I'm just wondering what your message would be to somebody who came to you, they ran up to you in a Starbucks and said, Mr. Foxworthy, I saw you on Mylett show and you talked a lot about faith and that area of my life I want to step into, I think. What would you say to them if you had a chance to visit with them?
Ed, I don't know if you'll agree or disagree. I think the secret to life, and for those just listening, I'm holding my hands clenched in a fist and I open them up. It's letting go. And I will tell myself that if somebody cuts me off in traffic, I'll clench my fist and I'll just sit there in the car and do that. Just open it and go, let it go, let it go. And it's realizing that everything that the world tells you will make you happy, it doesn't. It every it doesn't satisfy. It might satisfy for a little bit, but it doesn't satisfy for long. So we get lied to here, and we all want to be in control of our own life, and we're not good at it. We're not good at running our own life. And so, and I tell people, like, if you look around my office, I've got a laptop. I've got this little light here that helps light it up. Somebody thought this laptop out and created it with a purpose. Somebody thought this light out with a purpose. Somebody thought that chair out with a purpose. Uh, and why, how could you not believe in God when you can look around where you're sitting and everything in there was created with a purpose? But if you don't believe in God, you think you're an accident. You're the most complicated thing in the entire room and you're an accident. There's a bigger chance of throwing the parts of a 747 down an escalator and them all coming together and working than us being an accident. So if I wasn't an accident, I'm not in control. I'm the created. I'm not the creator. But if I'm the creative, I have a purpose. Everything in the body has a purpose. Like you're talking about, I get seen more. I might be the hand, but trust me, that ligament inside the hand doesn't work without the ligament. And that's what I think is we're created. I remember being a little kid, Ed, and and I gave my life to the Lord when I was 7 years old. But I grew up in a strict Southern Baptist church where everybody walked in a super straight, don't drink, don't smile, don't cuss, don't dance, don't straight line. And it was a dichotomy to me internally because I said, I'm wired like this. And for those listening, I'm doing a weaving motion. And I was like, God, I love you, but I can't do that. I can't do that. And it took a long time for him to finally whisper to me, who do you think wired you like that? Because I need that in some places. Sometimes I need that straight line. Sometimes I need that wavy line. And so what I found was that, like, because I grew up an outdoor, I'm a bow hunter and a fisherman and all that. Well, I could go do a wild game dinner for guys that would never ever go to a church. They wouldn't go to church to save their life, but they would come to hear me be funny. And I could go be funny for 30 or 40 minutes and roll that over into a story about God. And they would, and the response to it was crazy. People that, like, I ain't been to church in 40 years. I got mad at God, but I've never heard it presented like that. And so I thought, okay, so if I've taken the gift that the Creator gave me, and I always thought laughter was the release valve that kept the boiler from exploding, right? There's a value to it. But I've used it as a way to point back to the Creator, you know. And I think that's my purpose. Everybody's purpose is different, but I think that's mine.
So good, brother. My word for the year is surrender. That was my
Yeah,
word for the year. And
let it
that's what you
go.
just did with your hands.
And you know what it is? We think we're going to lose something when we
You're
do
right.
that.
I know. You
You
gain
think, oh my gosh, I'm giving up control. But the way of God is upside down to the world a lot of times. And instead of losing something, oh my word, is it freeing to go, hey, I don't know what's going to happen here, but you do. And you're in control of all of us. And you say, for those that love you, that what you've got for us is good. So I'm just going to trust you on that. I don't have to have it all figured out, but you do.
Yep. And by the way, go back to the beginning, guys. Just thank you, Dad.
Thank you, Daddy.
It's the
Yeah.
best,
You,
best visual, best example, best concept ever I've heard, because it's exactly for me uh, the way that I see my Savior. It was
yeah. I
really,
love you too. He said it first.
yeah,
He said it first at the cross. So when I think about him, I look up in the morning and go, I love you too, because
yeah.
he said it first.
Come on, you guys, this is so good. That was a quick hour. Oh man, thank you. What do you want them to go look at? I know you mentioned your podcast. Where you want to let's take everybody who's so darn emotional right now and sharing this. This is going to be one of the most shared episodes ever. Where do you want them to find you? Your podcast, social
Well,
media?
you can find me all over the place. Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you're interested in comedy, but you can find me talking about other stuff. I'm not a genius. I'm blessed, man. I'm grateful and I'm blessed that I've just had such a good life, hopefully, and I would kind of learn that through the years, like when we'd go through the hospital up there at Duke, and a kid didn't know you were coming, and you'd walk in the room, and there'd be one of my CDs or there'd be one of my books, and I would realize, oh, they're using this
Mm,
as a balm when I'm not here. There's value to this thing that's laughter, and that made me look deeper at it. So hopefully there's some value to it, right? And hopefully I use it for better things. Leverage that platform.
yeah, you are doing that. Today was just a complete blessing. I can't wait to see you on the road. We're speaking together.
Oh yeah, I hope we get to do this because I was looking so forward to doing it in person with you, and then my plane sat on the runway for 3 hours, and
By the way, guys, we were supposed to do this in person. I'll tell you all this last. In person, his plane sat on the runway for 3 hours, 15 minutes from where we were. Like
yes,
to
I
the
could
town,
almost see you, and I couldn't get to you. Yes.
he got to the town. He just didn't get to the town. So anyway, thank you for today. It was awesome.
Oh man, I look forward to the next time. Thank
I
you,
actually
buddy.
do too. We're going to do it again. Hey, everybody. God bless you. Share this with somebody that you love and care about. Max out. God bless you.